Hello, everyone, and welcome to Walking Through the Bible. When it comes to false doctrine, there is nothing new under the sun. We often think that the error of today has never been thought of before, but lo and behold, it can even be found in Scripture. The doctrine of total depravity teaches us that all people are born with a sin nature and are thus sinners at the moment of birth. Thus, without God personally opening their heart to the gospel, that they are incapable of finding God. And in Job 4, at the core of his argument, Eliphaz seems to hold to a form of that doctrine, although not man's inability to find God, in that his view of suffering is based on the fact that men and women are sinners, and therefore, if one is suffering, then one must be a sinner. And since man cannot be more righteous than God, man shouldn't be so bold as to declare himself righteous, especially while suffering. No, that's not classic Calvinism, but it will be very similar and will be further revealed in chapter 5. Eliphaz continues with his speech here in chapter 5, where in this chapter is going to admonish Job for his actions or lack thereof. So if you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Job chapter 5. We're going to be reading from verses 1 to 16. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry, just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Job chapter 5, beginning at verse 1. Call out now, is there anyone who will answer you? And to which of the holy ones will you turn? For wrath kills a foolish man, and envy slays a simple one. I have seen the foolish take root, but suddenly I curse his dwelling place. His sons are far from safety. They are crushed in the gate, and there is no deliverer. Because the hungry eat up his harvest, taking it from the thorns, and snare snatches their substance. For affliction does not come from the dust, nor does trouble spring from the ground. Yet man is born to trouble, as the sparks fly upward. But as for me, I would seek God, and to God I would commit my cause, who does great things and unsearchable, marvelous things without number. He gives rain on the earth and sends waters on the fields. He sets on high those who are lowly, and those who mourn are lifted to safety. He frustrates the devices of the crafty, so that their hands cannot carry out their plans. He catches the wise in their own craftiness, and the counsel of the cunning comes quickly upon them. They meet with darkness in the daytime and grope at noontime as in the night. But he saves the needy from the sword, from the mouth of the mighty, and from their hand. So the poor have hope, and injustice shuts her mouth. At the end of chapter 4, Eliphaz correctly said that nobody could be more righteous than God, even the angels. Therefore, who is man to think that he was righteous, for God would not trust him as so? What Eliphaz fails to see, though, is that this premise is wrong. Sure, man cannot declare himself righteous, but God can through grace. Sure, suffering can be sent by God on the evil, but that doesn't mean that because one is suffering that one is evil. When your premise is wrong, then your advice stands on shaky ground too, though some of it may be sound. Eliphaz continues in chapter 5 by really trying to get Job to admit that he is a sinner and that he is suffering because of that. He tells Job to call out for someone to answer him so that you can plead your righteousness before them. Will he call out to the angels? God does not declare them fully righteous, so how can they help? Will God come down and hear his case? Eliphaz thinks not, but even if someone did, Eliphaz is confident that Job would lose the argument, for it should be obvious that Job is suffering because of sin. Wrath kills a foolish man, envy slays a simple one. Eliphaz has seen it before, and when sin is so obvious, he calls it out without hesitance. Eliphaz doesn't see suffering as mere happenstance, as if it comes up from the dust on its own. Man is born into trouble just as certain as the sparks fly upward, and as such, as sinners, suffers because of it, with that suffering even extending to his loved ones and his possessions. This is another place where Eliphaz's worldview comes awfully close to Calvinism. It is true that mankind is born into a sinful world, but man is not made a sinner because of it. Man becomes a sinner when he sins, according to Romans 5 verse 12, and so while all who grow up to know the difference between right and wrong will eventually sin, it is wrong to say that a sign of one's suffering is evidence that one has sinned. Having convicted Job as a sinner, what does Eliphaz tell Job to do? Well, in today's reading, he tells Job that what he should be doing is seeking God and committing his cause to God. This is an implicit dig at Job, implying that Job has not been doing this. From everything in Job's character, I doubt that this is true, but from Job's words in chapter 3, I can see where Eliphaz might have come to that conclusion. Why would Eliphaz say that Job should seek God? Because God does great and unsearchable things. He gives rain on the earth. He sets high those who are lowly. He lifts to safety those that mourn, frustrates the devices of the crafty, catches the wise in their own cunningness, saves the needy from the sword and from the mouth of the mighty. This gives the poor hope and shuts the mouth of injustice. In this, Eliphaz speaks the truth. The Lord does all of these things, and Job should certainly seek the Lord. What is wrong in Eliphaz's statement is the assumption that Job hasn't done these things and that he is suffering because he hasn't done these things. It is one thing to say that the Lord has the ability to bring about good, and another to say that he hasn't brought about good in your life because you're a sinner. God sends the rain on the just and the unjust. Blessings don't prove one is righteous, just as suffering doesn't prove one is wicked. Bad theology, though correct in certain points, will lead to bad conclusions. And Eliphaz's conclusion about Job and his suffering is wrong here because he has an incorrect view about suffering. But Eliphaz is not done, and so we will conclude his speech, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Job chapter 5, verses 17 to 27, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. We thank you for watching Walking Through the Bible today. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. But if you like this video, we ask that you consider subscribing to our channel so you won't miss out on other videos in our series, as well as share this video among your friends so that the saving message of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.